to you. We're on the threshold of Guy Fawkes. We're not going to mention Guy Fawkes, nor are we going to mention the United States election, because none of us are thinking about that at all, are we? It is the readings for November the 3rd that we're breaking open. Ordinary Sunday 31, for those who aren't observing All Saints on this day. So welcome to you, and welcome Emma over the corner of the road from me in Queenstown, Frankton. Michael in Dunedin, Greater Dunedin, and Kelvin in his caravan in Rolleston. And just by word of explanation, we are propped up on Kelvin's knee. So if it gets a bit shaky, it's just the best we can do tonight. And Kelvin, in your precarious position there, do you have any background on this section?
Well, the story of the widow's mite is it's one we're so familiar with from about 1,000 flannel graph stories from Sunday school, but also probably from 10,000 stewardship campaigns, which usually use this as the opening scripture. And I suspect that the story doesn't say what most people think it does. And one of the reasons why it doesn't is because we pay so little attention to the context. And in this story particularly, the context is very important indeed. Remembering that chapter and verse divisions didn't get put into the New Testament until the 16th century. And this passage was meant to be read in the midst of a much greater piece of text. If you go right back, even to chapter 7, Jesus is in dispute with the scribes, that is, with the Sadducees, with the people who were responsible for running the temple system. There's many things that they debate about, but there's twice in that long passage of dispute where Jesus makes reference to the poor and the elderly being oppressed by the temple system. When people use biblical quotations to deprive their elderly parents of their support. And immediately prior to the story of the widow and her mite, Jesus upbraids the scribes for the burdens they place on widows and elderly, particularly that they are deprived of housing and even the very substance of being. And then we have the story, which seems to me to be an illustration of exactly what Jesus is talking about, where a poor woman with, in our 21st century terms, 2 $1 coins comes into the temple, all she's got, which might buy her enough flour to make some bread with, or a little bit of oil to do some cooking with, but she casts it into the temple treasury. And Jesus says, this woman is giving everything for the temple, and the scribes, they give nothing near as much, because they're just giving out of the bounty which they have, the bounty which actually comes from the donations of the common people. And then following on from the story, there is another interesting passage which we usually ignore. Immediately afterwards, the disciples comment on the size and beauty of the temple, as though they're saying to Jesus, well, that's where all the donations go. Isn't it wonderful that they make this magnificent building with all its pillars and walls and so forth? And then Jesus says, in actual fact, this thing is going to, within a generation, this temple won't exist. It'll be reduced to nothing. So the great system, which is so oppressive, is going to end. We always use this as a proof text that even if you're poor, you've got to give lots and lots of money to the stewardship campaign, which we're opening this afternoon. But I don't think that's what Jesus intends. He's saying that this great system is actually oppressive of the common people, and that underneath it are the people of faith who have really understood the nature of God and what he is. And this great burden is laid upon them.
All right. Very sort of salient at a time when we keep wondering about how we prop up our infrastructure, particularly within the Anglican Church. We might talk about that, or we might not, but we'll put it out there. Let's see where the challenges dwell. And if I could ask you, Michael, to tell me where you find this passage challenging, especially after that.
Yeah, I was just thinking of what Kelvin was saying. And for me, I guess it feels a wee bit like a lifting of a curtain. right in the first part where he talks about the lawyers or the scribes and how they like to sit in places of favor and to be seen. It's kind of like he's drawing a different kind of world, if you like, and he uses the idea of that riddle where he says, not only am I David's son, but he's David's Lord. So he's really pointed to something about who he is, which is much bigger than what they understand. And if you like, that lifting of the curtain, I think, happens with the woman who's so poor and gives everything she has. She puts in everything. You're showing that there's a different world altogether from what the one they're kind of trapped in. All they can see is their beauty of their temple, their what they do, their favored, prestigious places, but they've lost sight of who they are, meant to be, where God is.
Indeed, that's definitely challenging. Thank you so much. Emma, what do you find challenging?
This passage couldn't have come at a better time for me, actually. So weekend just gone, I won a big award at the Spirit of the Wakatipu Awards. So here I am having to get up on stage and tell people how wonderful I am and being told by people how wonderful I am. I'm in the position of needing to use that as sort of leverage to raise money for the charity that I'm now doing. And it's a very difficult line to know where to draw. Yes, I'm doing the right thing in taking the adulation and being this big person and strutting around like the scribes and so on did. You know, I have to put my photograph out there on Facebook. I have to sort of broadcast myself and all of those things, whilst at the same time not wanting it to be about me. I need it to be about the organization that I'm trying to support. And yes, I'm trying to fundraise. I'm trying to get some money. And I think it's for a great cause. You read this passage and you think, okay, well, there's a line there somewhere. I think I'm on the right side of that line at the moment, but it's very interesting to have that line kind of drawn by Jesus going, absolutely not. I mean, this is not Jesus being gentle and kind and meek and mild and all that. This is him absolutely going, no, these people are dreadful. And he makes no bones about that fact. He's being very, very clear. He's drawn an absolute line that they are way on the far side of. But we all must come close to that line at some point in our lives. And I feel it's just something I need to be aware of at the moment in my own personal life. So very grateful that this reading came up for me.
That's lovely because it's extraordinarily topical. So thank you. And that's very personal. So well put out there. Let's ask you, Kelvin, to go back and give us your personal challenge there.
I've been aware for as long as I've been in parish ministry of the way the church demands an awful lot of people. And sometimes it's money that's the issue, but sometimes we are oppressive in terms of people's talents and in terms of people's time, and take until people have got nothing left to give. For me, the challenge is, of course, the need to run an organization and buildings are expensive and, you know, all that kind of thing. But also this burden of care on the people who come to us precisely because they need that kind of care and that kind of nurture.
Indeed. And Emma and I are in a parish where well, Emma far more so than me, are the spring chickens, and very much aware of how much you can ask of the people who've done so much already. So yeah, it's very challenging passage at a whole lot of levels, but this can leave us feeling a little down. Emma, rescue us and bring us some good news.
The good news I saw is exactly going back to that situation, though, that whilst I'm not quite sure where I sit on the continuum of self-aggrandizing versus doing the right thing in the circumstances, because I have to make use of this opportunity. It would be a crying shame not to. But the really wonderful thing is that Jesus knows. He can see through. I mean, we're not really given a lot of background about how he knows that these people are just showing off and where their motivation is actually genuinely. We don't have a huge amount of background, but he doesn't mess about. He can see what's inside them. And I'm confident that so long as I keep being honest with myself and honest in my prayer, and that Jesus will actually understand what I'm doing and understand the reasons I'm doing it, and that it will be okay, because he can see through the, the plush clothes and the showing off and demands for money and all the rest of it, and he can actually see the motivation that's behind what we all do. And even if some people might get that wrong sometimes, Jesus and God are not going to get that wrong.
Thank you. That brings a good perspective. Let's hear Kelvin, where you unpack good news.
For me, the good news is it's kind of very deep in the story, and that is, it seems paradoxical, the fact that the temple is going to fall down, that this unjust system won't last, and that there is a much deeper truth which does last. I mean, Martin Luther King said, the bow of history is very long, but it tends towards justice, and that the justness and the goodness of God will ultimately prevail.
That's very deeply encouraging. Michael, talk to me about the good news for you.
Well, I think the good news is that Jesus takes notice of people who seem to be almost invisible, and of those, well, I like to think about they seem like inconsequential actions and how important they really are. And I think that God notices those things. So that's the good news. I think that is good news. Yeah.
I think it is, and encouraging for all of us as we make our way through this maze of faith and witness. Well, let's apply it. Let's ask Emma, so what for this?
So we've got some mixed messages about money. I went back to one of the other quotes: give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God what is God's. Because we've all got to draw that line in our giving. We've all got to draw that line at some point between what is just showing off and what is actually scraping the barrel to the point where we're, as the widow presumably did, putting herself in need, and then having to be therefore helped out by, again, there has to be a line in there somewhere. How much should we give? What should we give to? The fact that this money was going to the temple, we're not told what good the temple may have done or not. Is it just a building, or is it actually providing a refuge or a hospital? Or because temples over the years have provided so many different functions. There is so many charities that need our money out there. Yes, there's the church, but there's so many other charities out there that are constantly asking for money. What should we pay towards? And I don't think there's an answer. I think the key is to keep asking the question. What is this money going for? How much can I genuinely afford without causing an issue? And what do I wish to give to this? Where is that right point? And there's no one right answer. It will change over time for different people. And I think the key is ask the question.
Okay, so we'll live with the question there, and that's going to be helpful for us all. Michael, for you, so what?
Oh, well, I just, like Emma, asking myself personally, where do I sit in all this? Am I more comfortable with the scribes, with the comfort of their secure roles, or is it kind of, do I find myself more warmly associated with the woman who's able to put in absolutely everything? In other words, where is my trust? Where does that lie? And where is that being expressed? I suppose that for me is the so what. Well, and as church as well. How do we express that in our congregations? That makes us who we are. So,
Thank you. Yes. A final word, Kelvin.
For me, the so what is the whole question of following on really from what Emma was saying about money. The church tears itself apart on issues for which there is maybe half a dozen biblical verses to bolster anybody's view. When it comes to money, there's more than 2,000 verses about money in the Bible. And I don't think that many of us have a Christian theology of money and what it is and how we use it and how we responsibly handle it. And for me, that's the big so what.
An inescapable so what. So thank you. We'll be challenged by this passage, all of us, and it's right that we should. Kelvin, Emma, Michael, thanks for joining me, and let's see where this takes us as we break open the Word on Sunday.